Thanks for joining us this afternoon. This is a Let's Talk AI session. Pretty open, but since we're just off of that workshop on Friday, I thought we'd do a little debrief there. I've got some takeaways from our shared notes, and then I'd love to hear from those of you who are there what you remember now a few days later, what really sticks with you, and then we can go on from there and kind of see what rises up to the top. I have just one slide because that's just how I am. David knows that with some of the key topics. So we can get there. I'll kind of maybe just go through what I have, and then I'd love to hear from others. Are you seeing what are you seeing?
Your slides.
Okay, perfect. To me, that big message up front when Tim said, educate students for their future, not our past, that was, I don't know, it was kind of, it just struck me. I wrote it down, what he said. And I've been trying to keep that in mind and think about that as I sometimes feel a little nervous, and sometimes feel a little excited. So we need to really be thinking about if industry is requiring it, right? And there's a clear skills gap, outright bans saying nobody can use it is a disservice to students. We need to teach AI literacy, responsible use, critical thinking about outputs, and understanding risks like cognitive offloading. And cognitive offloading was a new term for me, but I had thought about that idea, right? Like, am I just going to get dumber if I keep using AI for things? And the term for that is when we have cognitive offloading, we lose those skills in our own thinking. Another piece that I've been really thinking about, because I have been thinking about student access to devices and broadband internet, also thinking about whether or not AI will increase access gaps. And really what Tim said kind of set my mind at ease about that for now, given the number of tools that are offering free premium access for students, like that Google Premium plan, through next year for a year. And hopefully there'll be something after that. But so I think access is less of a hurdle than I had thought before going into that. The discussion about agentic, is that what people are saying? Agentic AI?
Yeah.
An AI agent? I wasn't sure how to pronounce that. So those are the AI tools or agents that act autonomously to achieve goals. Certainly, I think he called ChatGPT baby AI, given what's going to be coming next. But it really reinforced to me why we have to engage with the technology now, because we're going to wake up in a couple of years, and if we haven't followed the progression and the understanding, we'll be completely behind. Does anyone remember the example he gave that kind of sent chills through my spine of what the AI agent was able to do for him?
No, I didn't see you shudder.
Well, he had it log into a Canvas course, complete
right.
the quizzes, write an essay, submit the essay, and get a good grade on it. So
and finish the course in, a matter of minutes for the entire course. Yeah, that was depressing.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely more to come on that piece, obviously. I think him being able to do that was a product of his advanced skills, right? But that if if the Opera browser soon has an agent button, it's not very far off for all of us to have access to something like that. We talked a lot, of course, about AI in teaching, focusing on partnership, not replacement, right? How can we use AI to write first drafts of rubrics, generate practice questions, design interactive and gamified activities? I just, based on what he taught us, just had it kind of reformat a text document I was working on. And it didn't come up with anything quite as advanced as what he had, like as good looking graphically. But it still was a much better organized and formatted document than what I'd done on my own. I thought that the Notebook LM tool was super interesting, how he used it to upload his course materials and then have different ways for students to interact with his syllabus. For student learning, I mean, there's a problematic uses, of course, but I was really impressed by the Gemini live voice interactions with interview, test practices, checking reading comprehension, rubber duck kind of practice tools. In ESL, which is what I teach when I'm not doing faculty development. I mean, there's just a huge numbers of things, like mind-blowing numbers of things that I can think that my students can do to use that to improve their language. Personalized tutor, a debate partner. My son is taking a class right now at UNO. It's a philosophy class, and his test, the most recent test that he did, his instructor created GPT with the course materials, and then the test was for the student to have a debate with AI. The student had to take a position and instruct the AI to take another position and have a debate, ask at least 5 questions and answer at least 5 questions, and then provide the transcript to the instructor. And that's your test. You submitted the transcript and you had to show that you understood the course materials in the course of that debate. And he said it's a lot harder to win a debate with AI than you might think. Actually, I'm not surprised it was hard to win a debate with AI. But that, I mean, that's just, people are already using that. I mean, that was his test for a philosophy class. And then I have notes about academic integrity. I think I was glad to hear, or it confirmed the understanding that I have that AI detection is unreliable, that we have to design robust, relevant assignments where either AI misuse is harder or AI misuse is less beneficial to the students, and then teach them why it's beneficial, why it's not beneficial. And that's really probably the core of our work as faculty members, is figuring out how to teach them, how to use it, and then to make assignments where it either makes sense to use it or where it doesn't make sense to use it for them. And then of course, privacy, I've got written down, being careful about sensitive data and public tools. I didn't really ever think to go in and adjust my privacy settings in the AI that I'm using. Yeah, I mean, I guess engage proactively. I sort of have a summary. Teach AI literacy, figure out how we can leverage it thoughtfully in our teaching and learning, figure out how we can design assignments for this new reality, and prioritize and teach ethical use. So that's a condensed version of my notes. And I'm really interested to hear what stood out to others who were there.
Yeah, this Chad. Just the one thing, Billy, I got out of. I've been doing AI since the '90s, kind of doing, but the robotics and machine learning and those type of things. So this was a lot different for me, hearing the education aspect of what he was saying. I think the key things I took from this is not so much with the academics of teaching and how we can use this as a service type tool. So, like the tutoring center and things like this, if we can make a chat bot or have something available there that they can go through and practice on their own and in a non-threatening environment, I think this allows that to happen. I also work with vets, so I think for our veteran center and things like that, having something that vets can use AI with, so they're not kind of, sometimes they don't like to be in front of people a lot, and everything else is something that can help them build confidence and build on their pattern of ways that they can learn and educate themselves. I think everybody should learn how to build a bot like he was showing us to do, because there's so many different ways we could use that.
Yeah. So Chad, are you thinking with veterans, would you use it as like I've seen prompts where you can have it like as a coach or as a mentor, kind of
right,
responding to you?
Yeah, that's what I'm actually working with Tim on a project I'm doing for another business of mine. I work with veterans, so I'm trying to work on a bot to help veterans in interviews. So veterans always have trouble with the different AFSCs and code language that is used in the military. So I'm trying to build a translation bot that kind of gets all those duty titles within all 4 services and kind of build an interview process to do that. So I'm working that on my own, but it's something that could be used in education as well.
That's cool. Oh, Manish, thank you. So Tim and Chad, are you talking about Tim Mosel, the facilitator?
Yes. Yeah, I talked to him during the break, and we were kind of throwing some ideas about this project I want to do. So he was real helpful in that.
Yeah, Manish, I'll put in the chat at some point a link to Tim's LinkedIn. He does a lot of discussion on LinkedIn about AI, and he's got a couple of businesses that he dropped references to, but he didn't dwell on too long. But he's developed a couple GPTs and some other things. Tim Mosel is his name. How about others? What sticks with you a week, almost a week out?
I think I teach speech occasionally, but I like the that part where it was the one that you talked to, the Google, one of the Google Studio, I think, tools where a student could use that to present their speech really, and then get feedback on it. And I think I think that'd be a really good way to help students. And I think students would get a lot out of it. And I think it's something we could implement probably pretty quickly into a course. And I
Yeah.
also like the idea of using it as a kind of a feedback tool for faculty, to help faculty identify things that they may not have identified on their own. I know that the program director and the course responsible party for the speech course are they're concerned about AI in that regard because they're afraid that faculty, especially some adjuncts, might use it to generate feedback and not actually watch the students' speeches, which I understand their concern with that. But I think that there's some potential benefits with using it in that way.
It's interesting, Tracy. I'm on a listserv. I think it's WCET or something that, have you seen those? Are you on that? There's a huge conversation happening right now about people kind of freaking out about faculty using AI to
Yeah.
give feedback and just pop it in and
Right.
never
Right.
look at another student
Yeah.
assignment again. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that happening. But yeah.
If I was an English professor and I had to read 40 essays every week, I might consider it, but they're responsible uses for sure.
So Tracy, kind of piggybacking off of your comments, since I'm also over in the speech department, and that whole section on Google Studio came up in the last 2 minutes of Tim's presentation. That was where it really did hit home for me an awful lot, that we are really in a different world. I want to be, Naomi, with you on the excited and sometimes a little scared. I'm afraid that I may be leaning a little more to the little scared than a little excited at some places, only because I've taught at R1s and I know how administration is. And as soon as administrators figure out that you can put more butts in chairs and have higher coursework because, well, we can just have the students turn this in through Google Studio, and the Google Studio can give instant feedback for, oh, but maybe the last speech. And we'll just have one instructor doing 40, 60, 80 instead of 20 people. I came home Friday at a place where I'm wondering, do I still belong in this career field? Or am I at a point where this technology is for the young kids? Yes, we had to learn emails. We had to learn how to deal with learning management systems. When I was the course director at George Mason, I held out as long as I could before we allowed the public speaking class to go online, because public speaking online sucks. I teach it, and I will continue to teach it whenever I'm asked to, but it's a horrible, horrible idea. There are other interpersonal communication classes that work just fine in an online format, but public speaking online does not do what it's supposed to do. And we had to take those steps because of administrators. And I'm very concerned, not necessarily Metro, but it's going to roll down no matter what. As soon as UNO and UNL develop changes that put a stronger AI required component into it, this is going to be a whole new world. And the methods, the mentality of kids coming into these classes, again, is going to be completely different. And when you're teaching in a gen ed course, but it's for your best interest not to do it in the easy way, it just doesn't. They're trying to get through the class. These kids already do the least possible that they can. If you say that it's a 75-word discussion board post, you'll get 76-word discussion board answers back. They're not going to do more than they have to. And so I came home on Friday pretty disturbed, honestly, after an awful lot of the conversations. There's a lot of really great stuff in there. I love some of the stuff, but I think overwhelmingly it was more on the oh boy factor in my mindset.
I appreciate you sharing that, Bridget. You're right. I do feel enthusiastic. So I really appreciate the other perspective as well. Yeah. Chad, were you going to say something?
Yeah, the one thing I'm a security person too. So the one thing that he mentioned at the end and didn't cover a lot on is there's I think it was Google LM or something like that. I'll have to go back and took my notes where you can actually work on ChatGPT or AI offline, so the information you're putting in isn't shared. And I think that's a worry of a lot of people is if you're writing a book using the and your information you put in there can be shared or taken by somebody else. So I think that ChatGPT and everything is coming up with more secure versions. That was the biggest knock on it at the beginning is people were making up resources and things like that it wasn't secure. But I think there's new avenues on it that are making it more secure, which is something I'm happy about.
I think that was the LM Studio.
Yeah, that was it. Sorry, couldn't remember what it was.
Anything else? If you just
For me,
yeah, go ahead, ask me.
For me as an instructor, I use it to generate a lot of sample data to do things with, whether it's programming or database and all that. So it will generate a lot of sample data for you to work with. And I'll tell students too, if you write your code, try to test it on some sample data. Now, you can use it at home as well to try to generate some data. It helps you know the structure of some data types. And I think that's a good thing. Now, definitely when talking about how you can log into a classroom, with everything being automated and having everything done for you, completing the whole class, that's definitely scary, right? I know recently we have professionals, as far as I know in IT, you have a lot of field visits that are happening just to get students to go see things that how companies are working with things. And we also have, and personally, I've met professionals, sometimes they talk about how students are now, they don't have the craft as when they come in, and they've done a few things, they completed assignments. Yeah, you can get an A in some classes, but now your at home work as far as building yourself is missing. So for me, it's like, if they start to use AI, this problem is going to be even more of an issue in that regard. But I did hear of the Shopify CEO that mentioned that he won't hire anybody that doesn't have AI skills, which is also another reason why I teach AI in class. In all of my classes, I try to incorporate it a little bit just because it gives you to be more, you can be more proficient, but you have to know some of the basics, right? In every field. And also you can get certain things done faster if you use it. So I always put all that up there for students to know. I always tell them the IVR, RVR, as far as automated system, AI does two things, right? It will automate a lot of stuff, but it's also an intelligent machine that try to be just like us, or even more, way better than us, because of how it can combine so many things. So machine will not probably, but it has replaced people before. It will continue to do that. And knowing how to use it will always help them. And some jobs, you might be the only one to get it because you know how to use AI, in addition to the degree that you have and things that you do.
Yeah, thanks, Asima. Well, what I thought we could do, just to kind of give a little structure to the rest of our discussion, although we certainly can keep debriefing as long as you want. I just kind of put together what I thought were the sort of the main topics from Friday. into a poll. And maybe if you would just select the topic that you'd be most interested in starting with this afternoon, and we can start there and then we can go anywhere, because that's what MCC does, right? That's a good joke. Start here, go anywhere. Tracy, that's our marketing slogan. You don't know that because you're from Bellevue, but so start here. Are you seeing the poll? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So you can only pick one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's going to happen, I think, here is that we're each going to pick a different one, and then we're going to be, we won't have a clear winner. We'll see what happens. One more person has to vote. There we go. All right, so no runaway winners. But I think if we start with talking about how we could use it in our work as instructors, that might be kind of fun. And then move over to that second most popular topic, talking about academic integrity, and that's related to assignment design as well. And then we can go from there. So please keep it wide open, but that maybe we'll start there with practical ways instructors can use AI, either to save time, to get help designing activities or rubrics. I'm very interested in what you all are doing. And I wondered if Manish would, if I could call on you, sort of unprepared, but I know he's presenting on this topic tomorrow, and you do have some great ideas. Would you start us off?
Yes, I'm actually trying to pull something up here. Just one second. Let me see. Can I share?
You should be able to, yep.
Yeah, let me just see if I can share my screen. Okay. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. So this is just a curated list of some of the ways in which I used AI in the past year for my classes or for my various things. So all the way from helping me draft a letter of recommendation for a student to creating discussion board assignments, all kinds of different things. So essentially what I do is I upload the information that I need. I give it specific instructions, and I actually have a conversation. I don't think there's a single one of these where I did not have 4 or 5 follow-up questions where I'd ask AI to do it. And so it depended on whether I was trying to create a grading rubric for my students for the classes that I was teaching, or even whether, I got an email which I didn't know if it was spam or not. So I just put it in the AI and I said, can you tell me? And the AI went and looked at all the links that were provided with and told me exactly where it was leading me, and eventually came back and said, do not click on this. This is malware. So I have found this to be very useful. I think of AI as a highly educated assistant, someone who has the information at their disposal. I just have to point them in one direction. So here are some of the things that I did. I'm more than happy. I'm actually looking for other things that you may have done that may not be on this list, so I can add to this as I go. And this is just a curated list. I culled and picked some specific ones from the ones that I did. I use it for all kinds of different things.
Manish, where do you think in this big list, where was it most effective and where was it least effective as kind of a thought partner or a work partner for you?
It was least effective in editing the letters of recommendation because it never wrote like me, no matter how hard I tried to get it to adjust what it was writing. So I found that it was not good. When it comes to having my voice in a document, it was not that effective. So, but I used it mainly to update letters. So if I already had written a letter for a student, and they'd given me an updated resume. I just said, can you look at the resume and add some more components that the student has done since the time I last wrote the letter? So it helped me pull some things in and say, since in the last year, the student has done. So it's least useful for that. It was really helpful for me when I had to create a test bank. So what I did was I just uploaded the chapter from the textbook, and I said, give me 25 questions with all aspects, all levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Tell me what the right answers are, which are the wrong answers, and also give me an explanation for which one is right and which one is wrong. So then I could go into Canvas, and then not only could I put the question in, but if a student clicked the wrong answer, I added that feedback that told them why that was the wrong answer. So to me, that was useful. It saved me the trouble of having to go through and add all of those for the assignment. So it was really useful for that, for generating those. So I found that to be the most useful aspect. Is I didn't have to sit and go through a thing. And it's one of those things where I let it do it. And there were many questions which I did not find satisfactory. So I just said, okay, can you give me 10 more questions? Can you give me 10 more questions? Then I picked the ones that fit my needs. But I found it to be really useful at taking large amounts of information. I gave it 6 or 7 chapters and said, can you give me an exam for this unit, for this module? And I want 100 questions. I didn't have to go through and generate all those questions or use a question bank that was provided by the textbook. So that was the most useful one for me.
Minshu, if I can jump in with
Yeah.
that whole idea, at the table that I was sitting at during Friday's session, there was conversation about a couple of the instructors who were trying to come up with a new textbook for their course, and they wanted to go to open source instead of having to use one of the big publishers. But the big pushback they had been receiving was, but then we don't get all that wonderful publisher support of test banks and et cetera, which we know all of those test banks are already out in all of the cheating forums that the kiddos use anyways, and they just Google the answers. So knowing that you were able to put the content in and have it update good test banks could really open the, can we use open source instead? Because an administrator, a course director could sit and say, here are our own questions for chapter 1, 2, 3, whatever. And so that could really help on using open source.
Yes, definitely.
Did you have to copy and paste the questions and responses into Canvas, or were you able to get it AI to do it in, I can't remember what the format's called for Canvas quizzes.
So Canvas sometimes, I mean, depending on how you build it, if you build a quiz, you use a QTI file.
Yeah.
So I did not have it do a QTI file. I wanted to curate each question, so make sure that I was putting in the questions I wanted. So I just copied and pasted from the AI document into the Canvas exam. Because even though I made it generate 100 questions, I only used about 20, 25 of them. So I did it the slow way. The one advantage I had was I was able to, because I used Perplexity Pro, I was able to upload multiple files on there. So I could take my textbook, the electronic textbook. Now there were 2 of them. I don't know if I have listed it here, but there were 2 textbooks where I could not get a soft copy to upload. So I simply told AI, can you go search for this publisher and then generate the questions? And it was able to find the publisher somewhere online and was able to generate the questions from those chapters. So it has access to, I guess, some of the publisher sites and can get some of those textbooks. So coming back to the point that Bridget was making, I think it should have access to the open source textbooks that are out there because it's open source. And so, or open, whatever it is, what do you use, OpenStax or something like that, I think, in biology. So it has access to all of them already. So if you simply tell them, please go to the one on biology and generate a set of questions. And I am not sure, because I haven't tried it, to see if it can generate them in a QTI format, which is what the new quizzes on Canvas uses. But I just did it the old-fashioned way, copied and pasted over.
Yeah, David, I think some folks in IDS were looking at that question last year, weren't they?
Yeah.
What was the answer to that question?
I don't know. I think it was yet to be determined.
Yeah.
Everything is such a moving target, I think the thing that we're focused on now is, as a bigger initiative at the university, is the accessibility. So that, for me, that's sort of what I was kind of trying to wrap my head around, was how can this help us, remediate so much of the work that's already been done, right? Can AI do that? And it's not very successful so far. I spent a lot of time working on it over the weekend.
David, can you clarify not very successful at?
So that I can give it a PDF document and it doesn't know really what to do with it. When I say I need to make this accessible, and then I'll say, make it a Word document or a text or a TXT document. It can't really do that. And I tried, I can't remember how many different AI agents, 4 or 5, and they all struggled with that. And we have some professors, as you all can probably imagine, in the sciences, right? So you have scientific notation that's an issue for screen readers, and then also schematic diagrams. And so when you're teaching, you're just going to go find a book that has a schematic, or you might draw something, and just copy it. And all of that kind of information that's been accumulated over the years at our institution all needs to be, remediated. So I was thinking maybe AI could just take a look at a schematic and tell me what it is and give me a nice long description and give me a document that would have that in it. Not possible yet. So it can help. The one thing I guess I will say that I tried with it was, and I was very encouraged by Tim's presentation, it can make your Canvas courses look better, right? And Tim hit on it, and as an instructional designer, I know Tracy will back me up. The evidence out there is that a good-looking course, a well-designed, good-looking course, students feel is much more professional, and they respond better to a course that, something that's not quite as well organized or isn't as polished.
I do agree with that. I think that's a good point. I think that Tim's demonstration of how I used AI to do that, I think was really good. And that's another way, obviously, that I can save time for instructors and for IDs, actually.
Yeah, I have a professor that I'm working with. Some of you may know him. I don't know. I know Naomi does. Terry Keebler in our motorsports program, and he's having a lot of trouble developing a whole program because there's no textbooks for how to how to fix a lawnmower, or that are out there in OER or things like that. How to wrench on a motorcycle or a snowmobile or side by side or four wheelers. I mean, he covers all of the gamut. Jet skis. So he's having to use a lot of materials that he gets from the manufacturers and then make tests out of those, right? So he has to read these elaborate manuals with elaborate exploded view diagrams of motors and moving parts, and then make quizzes and tests. And it's been a real challenge for him. And I think some of the things that Tim showed, especially the animations, will be helpful to him. I haven't spent much time with Terry this week, but that's the idea. Is I'm going to have some seat time at the end of the term and go through some of this and see if we can't load some of that kind of stuff and make teaching materials from that we glean from other materials that are not meant to be teaching materials, right? They're just essentially shop manuals or things that state facts. So I think that'll be exciting to work with him.
Anybody else interested in sharing a use that you've found or been experimenting with or have questions about for your teaching? We can talk about assignments and stuff too, and how students are using it. But before we move on, does anybody have anything else to share about kind of their use as a teacher?
I just would say that I like the fact that you had him come. Right. I think that's what people are sort of hungry for now. These questions that we don't know how to answer are basically because nobody that we've had exposure to was advanced as Tim was, right? So he was addressing a lot of those, the ethical questions and those kinds of things. But he also did a really good job of, from a teacher's perspective, cover all the bases on how he thought it could be used or not used. Gave really great examples. I'm hungry to go to more conferences to see more examples. And as we get further into this, they're going to become more and more complex utilities of this technology. So it's exciting. We're at the beginning, and I'm just glad that you brought someone in that really sort of hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I agree. He did a good job. It wasn't, that's a NISOD workshop that I worked with NISOD to bring him here.
Mhm.
He's thoroughly vetted and obviously an expert, but you never know what someone's going to be like when they come. And I just thought he did a really good job too. It was a lots of good levels, like no matter sort of where you were, I think it gave you something that you could try out that was beyond your current. I mean, certainly like a lot of the programming he was doing was beyond what I am really interested in learning. But yeah, I thought it was good too. Thank you for that feedback. Jeffrey.
No, just quickly, I agree with everything everybody said. I'm not necessarily looking to probably change anything I'm doing right now because the semester's underway, but I'm looking forward to the summer and how I can certainly engage students with respect to just the look, the modules, or even just some of the things, the animation he showed and the different options, even with chatbots. So it's giving me more time to sort of play around and tinker a little bit with upcoming classes. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. He told me, I don't know if he said it during the presentation, but when we were talking before, he said that since before ChatGPT was released, he has not spent a single day of his life where he has not done something, either reading or experimenting or working with AI. So tinkering is about the level I'm at too, Jeffrey, but he's done a lot more than tinker. Well, then let's, I think Bridget's point at the beginning is a good one. It's easy to get excited about what we can do and then forget the reality of faculty members who receive. I talked to someone on the phone a couple weeks ago, and she said about 50 to 75% of the essays that she got for a recent assignment, she just thought they were just like pretty much unedited output of a chat GPT. And, I don't know that. I think a lot of us are getting a little more sophisticated with our assignment design and with just kind of talking to students about it. But we can't ignore the fact that faculty are still seeing just what we would call outright plagiarism or cheating. And I guess maybe talking about how people are dealing with that and the kinds of assignments they're designing might be a good next thing to think about together.
I think one of the considerations that we just basic early on in course construction need to be concerned with this is that we have to line out in our syllabi what we're doing and what the policy really is. And if we're going to use assignments that use it to help train them into how to use and to get them exposed to it so they have something to say during their job interviews when they can say, yes, I have proficiency because I've done this and this. We've got to be a lot more clear early on with what we have as here are acceptable uses, here are not acceptable uses. It would be good if there was something at a department or ideally even institution-wide basis that could be used, maybe 2 or 3 different samples of, okay, if you don't want to use it all in your course, here's how you say, no, you may not. And here's what will happen. And if you want them to use it as a tool to practice and to use and to try, then here would be a good example paragraph of what to do. But I also think we need to actually take the time to discuss it with our students. The number of students I have had in the last 9 sections I have taught who have said that my conversation with them is the very first time an instructor has addressed AI with them is really scary, because we've now been dealing with it for a solid year plus a semester since ChatGPT came out. And I still, as of this term, had, I'll say, the majority of my students say that I was the first person to actually address it with them. And so from a legal front, a syllabus is a contract. And so we need to give them better direction about what we're expecting. And it's just my beginning thoughts on it.
I would definitely second that, Bridget. So one of the things that I grapple with is that different instructors have different thresholds of tolerance for AI. And sometimes it would be nice to have a common language just as a baseline that's established at the institutional level. And then within that, you make your modifications. So your suggestion of having one that just covers a blanket no, another one that says, yes, you can use it for certain aspects, just language that's written. I like the fact that Metro has these templates and you can pick and choose which ones you want when you make your syllabus. It helps you have a set line because the biggest confusion for students would be if they're taking 3 courses and 3 different instructors have 3 varying policies. It gets confusing for them after a while to expect them to remember which instructor was the one that did it, or they try to play one against the other by saying, well, but the other person said I could do this and you cannot, and it gets murky. But I think having some just common language in a syllabus in the same location in all syllabi would help direct the conversation at the start of the very first day when we discuss the syllabus with the students. And we say, okay, here's the AI policy, the standard policy. This is my, what's the word I'm looking for? This is my modification to it or my adjustment. You're allowed to do it. Because even at Midland, we have some faculty who absolutely no. Whereas in my case, I say you can use it as a tool, but not as a assignment generating device. So I encourage them to go use it because I do want to train them for the future. I don't want students to go out and not have any experience with using AI and then walk into a workplace and get into trouble.
I mean, we're back to Wikipedia. Can you use Wikipedia as a tool? Is Wikipedia verboten? We're just back to that whole thing, just in a new iteration of it.
I think in the beginning, I was a little naive. I thought, well, we have academic integrity policies, and this is a different tool or a different aspect of that, but it still falls under questions of academic integrity. And I still think that that could be argued, but I also think it's not a practical stance to have because at least students' understanding of what AI output is, if it's original, right? It doesn't exist somewhere else. They created it-ish, right, with their prompt. And so definitely having a clear statement, but also that teaching aspect, like both Bridget and Manish talked about, of what is academic integrity and how does AI fit into that is super important. And then I'm also wondering how we talk to students about the impact that like overuse or over-reliance or inappropriate use of AI might have on just their brain, on their learning, on their ability to think. And has anybody mentioned that to students, or how are you approaching that even in your own work with students? Like Manish, do you think that you're going to not be able to develop a rubric anymore because you've been relying on AI for that?
So the caveat I should add is I never ask it to generate from scratch. So I always make something up and then I upload it and say, can you suggest tweaks or modifications? So that's my way of making sure that I'm not completely handing over all my intellectual prowess to AI. And that's what I tell the students also. So I don't know. I can still see many tasks eventually becoming one of those where you just say, oh, AI will do it for me. So we have that fear. But I also think as teachers, it is our obligation to teach them ethical behavior, to tell a student what is appropriate and what is not, and that, excellence is a habit. And what you repeatedly do is what you are. So if they're using this to cheat, then they're cheating, and that's not the intent of using this. So there are some things that, yes, the several things that I do today that I probably cannot do anymore but then it's same with driving a car. I've forgotten how to walk because I drive everywhere. And so I can't walk too far. And so I think, yes, I think repetitive tasks, if it takes away the mundane repetitive tasks and you don't have to have students worrying about those things, that's okay. But I think the intellectual aspect of a course, that definitely should not be replaced by AI.
There's I like the idea of rather than prompting, getting the output, and then revising that based on your expertise to do the intellectual work up front and providing that and then asking for feedback. That seems like a way to preserve some of those skills. Yeah.
I did want to point out on this topic that, I do have a concern in general that we tend nowadays to focus a lot on the negatives and we let the tail wag the dog. So we're so worried about the one or two students who might game the system and submit something that's not theirs that we prevent everybody else who might use it from using. And it just worries me a lot that many of the times we focus a lot on that exception, that one or two students who might circumnavigate or circumvent some of your restrictions and say, okay, this won't work, let's not do it altogether. Whereas if we can craft something or draft something that they can follow and then take into account those little exceptions and say, okay, catch them when we can, then it might be a better way to go. Because, I mean, like it or not, AI is there. So we can't expect the students to suddenly walk in and figure it out by themselves. And that's the reason why I let my students use it as a tool. And if you've used it often enough, you can catch when it's there writing and it's not. So one of the things I do, they don't realize this, in the very first week of class, I tell students, I want you to write a personal essay just about yourself. And then they submit that. And then later on, if there's something that comes in that's highly polished and very well written, I can have something as a frame of reference to say, this doesn't sound like your voice. And at least with my small classrooms, I'm able to gently nudge the student and they usually admit, yeah, I know, I got it from this. Okay, there's a big difference in the style. And AI still, ChatGPT is very stilted in the way it writes. You can tell when it came from AI or when it came from a student because there's a certain structure that they follow. They have always a concluding paragraph, an introductory paragraph. It follows that structure. And so a smart person, yes, can circumvent that. And you can actually tell AI to write like a 9-year-old and do things like that. But still, I think it takes more effort to do all that than to actually write something up.
One thing I had wanted to mention at some point during Friday's session and wasn't able to find a way to work it in is that there have been some basic studies done that show that the AI catchers, right? The is this AI, is this not, disproportionately identify people who are on the spectrum as their work having been AI generated. And so I have a concern that we may be over, false positives on kiddos who are on the spectrum, and that leads into all sorts of SDS stuff that none of us want to have to deal with. In addition to just being mean to people who don't need to have been treated badly. So it's just another concern there on this isn't your voice, because I agree, we can all tell when this thing comes in and it isn't. But knowing that even when we had like plagiarism detectors and could say, this is clearly plagiarized, it's awfully hard to actually deal with that in the moment, especially with having administration having your back or not, as to whether or not you're going to give that student a 0 for the assignment, a 0 for the class. What are you going to do with it that clearly? If it's this uncertain, and unless we have really good policy in place, I just don't know, even if we say, hey, this isn't your work, what are we going to do about it? And again, I agree with you completely on the not chasing the tail, because I don't have the time nor effort nor energy to chase down one student who decides that they're going to copy and paste something for a class. But I also think that they're smart enough to know that they can get by with 1 or 2 things in every single class and nothing's going to happen because of it.
Also, non-native speakers. Bridget, you mentioned folks on the spectrum, and also non-native speaker writing is more often flagged by the detectors as being AI generated when it's not. Yeah. Asima, you came off mute. What do you want to add?
I was about to say that if there have been times where I remember I was trying to try. I think when we first had that Turnitin detector, and there are also other detectors online, and I used it, and I find out somebody copied something. Sometimes when you copy and paste in Google. Turnitin may not find anything, but you copy and paste in Google, just Google alone, and then it just sends you where it has been copied verbatim, right? And I found out all the stuff that the person used, the person mentioned that it all was generated from AI. And the students went to that source, which was all AI generated, and did their work off of that. So it's like, well, now they went to a source, but that source was all AI generated. So what? It's like, well, okay, what are you gonna do now? If they were paraphrasing now, the bad thing with that student was that everything was verbatimly, they copied it verbatim, so that was just there. But if they were just using it as a source to work with, it's just like using another source, which is like, well, trying to track that can be a problem. Can be, if you were to really go after them, then there's an issue. But I just think that it can be hard, because even when it comes to using context a lot in an assignment, you can always tell AI, okay, so if you think of me um, as being a reserved person, or as being uh, introvert, or all this, how will you respond to this question? if if you ask the students, give me a reflection about something, it's you giving the reflection, right? So knowing that you can educate AI about yourself, and then ask AI to give you a response considering you, then I think no matter what we do, I just feel like, and as people learn more how to use it, someone can always get AI to do the whole work. You can get, because you can feed it. Another thing is a machine that is learning. So you can always feed the machine few things for the machine to use that to work with. So it does that, depending on which one you're using, it will do that very, very well.
Yeah, that's a great point, Asima. I don't know if anybody checked out. Remember at the beginning of Friday, and Manish weren't there. He played a video that he had produced with an AI avatar, and that the company or the platform was HeyGen, I think, that he used for the avatar. So I went and I just signed up. I'm not going to pay anything, but just to see what it was. And one of the things that they offer is you can upload 5 minutes of yourself talking. So just kind of natural speech. And it will, of course, analyze your language use and your expressions and your gestures, and create not one of their like stock avatars, but create one of you, right? And then you can then give any text to your avatar and have your avatar explain that to your students, right? So you don't have to be on camera, but it's you and it's with your facial expressions. And I was like, oh, I'm totally going to do that. I have a ton of faculty development stuff that I can do this. And then I thought, well, wait a second. Do I want 5 minutes of my voice and my likeness given to this company? Like, I'm not usually much of a conspiracy theorist, but like right there, I stopped myself and said, wait a second, don't give them all that data about yourself. And I was thinking of that, Asma, when you said, like, we tell the AI a lot of things about ourselves, right? And I think in the case of, like, I'm an introvert or whatever, that's probably not as, not so concerning, but could be a lot of data about us, including our voices and our likeness and our word patterns and our way of speaking and writing that, I don't know, could be used in ways we don't want it to be used in the future. Anything else this afternoon that you might want to cover or say that we didn't get to?
Actually, one point I just want to make was, so I think it's useful for some professions. For example, if you're a realtor and you have to list a property, there's only so many ways your limited knowledge can get you to write about the property. So I think AI would be really useful for someone like that. or someone who's starting a small market or small business and they won't advertise. And they can say, AI, these are my details. This is my contact information. These are the skills that I have. Can you generate a file, an advertisement that I can send on Facebook? I think it is useful in those regards, and we should not disregard that ability. I know there's lots of policemen, for example, who put in data, information they've collected and have it generate a report, an incident report. It's easier. Not all of them, I mean, they're not in their profession, they're not trained to be writers or not trained in speaking. And so it helps those. And then I know people for whom English is not a first language, but who would like to discuss some topic with someone. It's easy for them when they're sending an email out to a boss to first have the email put into AI and say, can you just brush up the language and fix the grammar and things, so they can send the email so that nothing is lost in translation. So I think these are some of the things that I tell my students is how they can use them in the future.
David, any final words?
No, I think this has been great. I think this is, part of an ongoing discussion. I know that at our school we have our faculty lead meeting tomorrow. Online faculty leads meet, and I know that this discussion will continue to be fostered there about what is the institution going to do to help us, make these rules. I think that's continually been an avenue that I've heard faculty talk about. I don't know if the institution has the ability to do that yet. I mean, they do, and I think there's a great need for that, but I don't think they've addressed how they want to structure that.
Yeah, I don't think that's done at all yet. I know that none of us want the school to tell us how we can and can't use AI in our classes and with our students and in our work. But I think, like both Bridget and Manish said, having some, like, if you believe this, then here's a quick statement that you can put in your syllabus and then talk about with your students. Those things would be really helpful. And there's a lot of those out there. And I can send some examples just for this group. There's some Google Docs out there that people have shared with lots of examples that you can pull from in the meantime. But yeah, ongoing conversation for sure. I just appreciate your thoughtful perspectives and the balance between excitement and trepidation and maybe some fear there too. So thank you so much for everything that you contributed and for coming this afternoon.